Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of The Fad Show. So continuing with my theme of extremely rare manual vehicles, on this week's episode I have this beautiful 2012 Porsche Cayenne with a 6-speed manual transmission. And I think this might be the rarest manual vehicle I've had to date on this show. I know not a lot of people are even aware that this car even existed. Ever since my lady friend and I picked this up, I don't know, it was probably about a month ago at this point. I've had many people reach out and say, wow, I didn't even realize they made that in a manual. And yeah, I don't think that's kind of true, that not a lot of people know about it. It is interesting that Porsche even made this vehicle. I'm immensely grateful that they did. It took forever to find it. But on today's episode, I'm gonna walk you through it and tell you a little bit about it. So how rare is this car? Well, to be honest, I do have to admit that maybe the title of this video was just a little bit clickbaity because I don't actually know the exact number. I did, however, do a lot of research, and I do have a theory that I think this might be, basically I just think it's extremely rare, and I'll get into some details to why I think that. I was able to find the production numbers for the previous generation Porsche Cayenne 957 GTS, which was the V8 version. This version didn't come in GTS in a manual that I'm aware of. Could be wrong on that. But for the 957 generation, there was 134 manual Cayenne GTSs made out of a total production number of 15,700. That's put into that 0.85% production in the manual imported to the US. And just to put that into perspective, the 991 generation 911 was about a 20% manual take rate. So that's extremely small. And this vehicle was extremely hard to find. There's probably only one or two of these for sale in the country at a time. If any, there was long periods of times where there was just zero, and it was a pain in the ass to find them too, because normally for some reason people think that dual clutches are manuals or Tiptronics are manuals, and they always list them as manuals, and you have to weed through the pictures to find out if it actually is a manual. But I digress, getting off track. It's extremely rare. This was harder to find than my BMW E91 manual rear-wheel drive wagon. There's always probably 2 or 3 maybe of those for sale in the country at a time. There's probably 1 or 2, and that car was one of 429, and there was long periods of time where there was actually none of these for sale. So Porsche didn't put out the exact production numbers for the 958. I mean, I guess I could have reached out to them to see that maybe they would have answered. I did actually reach out to Volkswagen America on my VW All-Track SEL manual and found out that that was one of about 1,500. They didn't give me an exact number. They said 1,500-ish. So after 2 years of looking through private party sales where people just wanted astronomical money for them, or your used car dealerships that wanted book value money on them but had absolutely no service history, wouldn't let us get a PPI done, finally we found this car in Renlist. It was all the way up in New England, which usually, I'm from New England originally, but since I've moved to Texas, I like southern cars because there's no rust, and I hate working on cars with rust. But anyways, I digress. It seemed like it was from a pretty good home where the person had it from new, had the entire service records for its entire history. So we actually got a screaming deal on it because it had a drivetrain vibration, which I've already fixed with just changing the transfer case fluid. So I got a good deal on it, shipped it down here. It's in pretty amazing shape for an SUV with 120,000 miles. Yes, it's from New England, so there's a little bit of surface corrosion, but nothing too bad. And it's actually a pretty nicely equipped one where it has the adaptive headlights, adaptive suspension, it has the 18-way seats, Bose stereo. So it's pretty nicely equipped. The original MSRP on it was $65,000. We got it for $13,700. So I think that's a really good deal because it's pretty much the cheapest I've seen like well-sorted ones go for, even with this type of mileage, is about $120,000. So I think that's a pretty good deal. So manual SUVs are becoming few and far between. The original BMW X5 and X3 came in a manual, and those are pretty much it for the luxury SUVs besides this. Then pretty much the only SUVs that are actually left now are the Jeep Wrangler, and then the forthcoming Bronco supposedly, I guess, is going to be offered with the manual. But yeah, the manual SUVs are extremely rare. And that brings me to a point of who this car actually is for. When you think about your normal Cayenne buyer, which is kind of a typical soccer mom or whatever, but I don't really actually know. We like driving manuals, and my lady friend likes higher up SUV type vehicles. So this was kind of the perfect car for her, where it's nice interiors, kind of luxury, sporty SUV, still high up off the ground, so you don't have to worry about speed bumps and curbs and parking lots and stuff like that, and has a stick shift. I will admit there's very little Porsche DNA in there. Maybe I shouldn't say that. There's a lot of Porsche DNA in it. There's not a lot of traditional sports car Porsche DNA. This car was actually built in the Leipzig, Germany factory, which is the same factory that built the Carrera GT. And that's pretty much about the only thing that this shares with any of its sports cars, where it's little brother, big brother, 911 over there. I don't really know which one's the big brother and which one's the little brother. But as you can see, the styling of this car was definitely based off of that, but that's kind of where the similarities end. I mean, BMW calls their SUVs sport activity vehicles, and that's probably a good description for this car. It's a little bit more sporty than your traditional SUV, definitely more sporty than a body on frame SUV, drives nicer than those, and it does have like very little body roll, especially when you put the suspension in the sport mode. It's actually kind of impressive. The only recent SUVs I've driven are Toyota 4Runner and a Subaru Outback, if you count that as a SUV, and those definitely have immense body roll compared to this. But if you're trying to replace like a Volkswagen GTI or something sporty that's along those lines, you're probably gonna be a little disappointed. But if you like driving a manual and you don't care about the like sports car driving dynamics, and you just want like a well-planted SUV, then look no further, and there's absolutely no other options anymore. So with that, let's do what this car does absolutely best and go on a Starbucks run, and I'll talk about the everyday driving dynamics of this car, and then we'll take it maybe to a sporty road and see if we can't spill our lattes after that. All right, thanks for watching, guys. I always go inside because that's how I believe coffee shops should be, but in the interest of science today, I'm testing out this Porsche Cayenne. I'm going to go through the drive-thru and be a true Texan.
Hi, what can I get started for you today?
Could I have a grande hot vanilla latte, please?
Grande vanilla latte? Yeah, what else for you?
That's it.
Alright, it's going to be $4.93 today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Wow, she's very excited to take my order today. So I will say it is nice riding in something this high up with a manual and not having to worry about driving over curbs. Thank you very much. So I think I would have got out of there 20 minutes earlier had I just walked inside, but not getting out of your car, that's the American dream. And the Porsche Cayenne was absolutely perfect for the Starbucks run. Didn't have to worry about any curves. It was in comfort, nice plush leather seats, and the manual transmission didn't really inconvenience anything. First test is a win. So now that we've got our Starbucks, flip someone off for doing a U-turn in a no U-turn lane and being wrong yourself, and made it to soccer practice, we've completed all the necessary Porsche Cayenne daily activities. Sorry, cracked myself up. But all joking aside, we're at the Fad Show Proving Ground, so let's take this thing for a ride and see how it does. Get this thing on the road. I did have to do a little bit of light off-roading to get to soccer practice here, and I wasn't planning on testing that, but I have to say, top notch. Far better than my lowered sports cars. And all joking aside, I mean, if you're using this car for just a kind of daily run around town car, it is quite nice. From someone that drives a lowered sports car every day, oh, this off-roading is setting off all the parking sensors. From someone who drives a car in H&R lowering springs as my daily driver, it's quite plush and quite nice. One thing I have realized is an issue with the manual transmission, and you can tell that this car was not originally designed for a manual transmission, but this cup isn't too high. But I have noticed, like, if you have a tall water bottle here and you're changing gears, it's a pain in the ass because they put the cup holders right behind the shifter. And yeah, so like when the suspension's in comfort mode, like I have it right now, it's just like super plush, subtle ride. Like I said before, these seats are super soft and comfortable. So for just running around town, it's actually quite nice. Although, if that's what you're doing, I tend to doubt you probably don't want a manual transmission, so I'm still kind of scratching my head as to why they built this car. But I'm glad they did, because even in my plush ride around town ride, I prefer to have a manual transmission, and I don't think it's an inconvenience. I know other people might feel the same way. It's definitely not a sporty manual box. The clutch is super light, and the throws are pretty long. They're not as engaging as some sports cars, but they're actually honestly not bad. I mean, and I don't actually really like Porsche shifters that much, and this is kind of not that much difference, in my opinion, than my Cayman and my 911. But yeah, so that's the thoughts on the shifter. Now let's go ahead and put this into sport suspension. And I don't know if the car has a sport button too. Oh yeah, it does. All right, so we'll turn that on too. We put the suspension in sport and everything else in sport, and we're on a twisty road, and let's see how it does. Wow, definitely improved the throttle response. And here's a corner, pretty sharp one. See how it gets on. Wow, honestly, I've always had the suspension in comfort when I drive this, and holy shit, that is actually surprising for an SUV. So maybe I might have to rescind what I said earlier about it just being a dressed up sporty or sport activity vehicle. But wow, and it heavied up the steering too. All right, I'm kind of impressed. Definitely regretting what I said earlier in this video. It's a little bit more engaging than I thought it would be. There's some good steering feel back, the turn-in feels good, mid-quarter balance feels good, and then the throttle response is good. And honestly, this 300 horsepower V6, which doesn't seem like a lot, but this is actually a pretty light SUV at only 4,300 pounds. So I have to say, it's actually pretty engaging to drive, and obviously the stick shift does that. The ratios are kind of far apart, so you're not banging through gears all the time, but it is fun to drive. I'm actually really impressed now that I took this on a sporty road. All I've done is drive it around town, and it is really good at that too, just being a plush, subtle ride. But I put it in sport mode, put the suspension in sport, and it's driving quite nice. And honestly, one thing I have realized as I come up to a corner right now is it is possible to heel and toe in this car, which usually I have trouble doing that with all three pedals hanging from vertically from above, because my feet are small and totally botched that shift up. But usually I have to have my gas pedal from the floor to be able to heel toe, but you actually can in this, which is quite nice, because all my Volkswagens that have the three pedals from above, I can never do that. And may not be necessary, but it is fun to do. Yeah, so I guess I have to take back what I said, and I'm pretty impressed with how this drives. Even with the suspension in sport, like, this ride's actually pretty competent. It actually has a pretty sporty ride. Wow, I'm impressed. But yeah, overall, this is, if you want a manual SUV, like, I don't think, obviously there's not many choices out there. You have like the CX-5 was made for a while in the manual. The earlier Ford Escapes were made in the manual. I think there's some Jeeps like the Renegades and stuff. I don't really pay attention to those cars at all, but I think you can get those in a manual. But yeah, and thank you so much for Porsche for actually making this. Like, it blows my mind that in 2012 when this car came out, they were not making a manual in the GT3, which upset a lot of people. And then also the 991 Turbo was never offered in the manual. So why they offered it in this car, or why they offered it in this car, I have no idea, but I'm glad they did. This is actually, I've been quite impressed with this. Ever since my lady friend picked this up, I've been a little bit jealous. For me, I don't think it gets quite good enough fuel economy to be my daily driver, because we've been getting about 18 on premium in this. And then obviously in my Mark IV TDI, I get like 50 miles to gallon on diesel. So yeah, this would cost way too much for me to daily, but yeah, I'm still kind of jealous. I secretly like driving it more than I guess my typical car history would show. And like I said before, I'm just happy that Porsche made this. And I think that these are going to be a future collectible, because I mean, as cars progress forward and forward, they're just kind of removing that engaging driving feel. First it was like electronic power steering, but now they've kind of dialed that in where you kind of get some of the old hydraulic feeling to it, and then now they just have all the driver assists that just kind of take away your connection with the road. And then if someone wants something raised up like this, there's literally no other options. So I kind of think that this is going to be maybe 5 or 10 years from now somewhat desirable for people that want something that's high up, raised up, can fit a bunch of people in it, and then also have like an engaging drive. Because honestly, I'm quite surprised. This wasn't at all where I was expecting this video to go. I was expecting to rip on this thing, and after 2 seconds of being on a twisty road and being able to do that and that, I am quite impressed with it. I'm in an S-curve right now, and I feel like I'm driving a heavy sedan, not an SUV. So take that scientific, whatever, journalism maybe is what I'm doing. No, I'm just a guy. Just an a-hole who likes cars and walks into a camera. All right, but now I'm ranting. I think I got out everything that I wanted to say about this. Thank you, Porsche, for making this. I'm actually really surprised with this car. It's really good. I'm really happy we found this car. I think we got a great deal on it. I think it's going to be a great car going forward. I'm excited to maybe make some more videos with it. I don't really know what that's going to be. If you guys have anything that you want to see, then please let me know, and I'll try and accommodate it. Also, if you happen to know how many of these cars are actually out there, I'm super curious to know. But yeah, as always, thanks for watching, guys. And if you really like this video, then go ahead and like and subscribe, and I'll be happy to share more content with you and hopefully others in the future. All right, have a good day, guys. Thanks for watching. Bye.